So this week's Parashas Vayishlach, and as well we'll tie it into Hanukkah, as Hanukkah is approaching in a couple of weeks as well. The Torah begins with Yaakov preparing to meet Esav. The battle between Yaakov and Esav. And Yaakov prepares in different ways. He sends a daron, a gift, like a bribe, just to appease Esav. He prepares for battle. And he is mispalo, and he prays. As the Torah tells us, Hatzileni na miyad achi miyad Esav. God, please save me from the hands of my brother, umiyad Esav, and from the hands of Esav. So the commentators are bothered by the obvious question. We know the Torah is very concise. There's not an extra letter in the Torah. Even a kutso shel, even the way a letter is written, we're going out different halachas. The tagin. So it seems very redundant here. Save me from my brother, save me from Esav. Last I checked, Esav was his brother. So the Torah should have said, save me from Esav, or save me from my brother. Why the double language? Save me from my brother, save me from Esav. There's a famous Beis Halevi. Beis Halevi points out that really there are two forms of anti-Semitism. The two types of ways the non-Jews try to come and destroy the Jewish people. Either through the method of my brother, or through the method of Esav. So Esav is the one, when they come along, and they come with the pogroms, they come with the sword, and they want to kill us. That's the Esav. However, there's another type of enemy, and that's they come as our brother. They want us to assimilate. They want us to intermarry or take on their culture, and that's when they come as our best friends, and they want to get us to change. So that's the double language. That's what Yaakov is praying for. Save me from both types. And we see he put miyad achi first. He put my brother first in terms of that's probably the more dangerous one. Physically speaking, he didn't endanger his worth on the physical, but in terms of long term, if the Jews assimilate and intermarry, that'll be a long-term disaster for the Jewish people. So that's what the Beis Halevi points out. And in fact, that's what they point out as well. We see that the Chazal tell us, our rabbis tell us, it's called Har Sinai. The Torah, the mountain that the Torah was given on, is called Har Sinai. Why Har Sinai? So Chazal say, because miyad yarda sinah me'elam, from there hatred came on. That's the beginning of anti-Semitism, is Har Sinai. The problem is, we know anti-Semitism began well before Har Sinai. In fact, this week's Parsha, Vayishlach, when Esav and Yaakov met, and they had the dots on the letter, and he kissed him, that really he tried to bite him, he tried to kill him first, and then after he couldn't kill him, then he wanted to give him like a hug. When you could wrestle with someone, either you could be fighting, or you could be hugging the person. So, we know, Rashi quotes over there, Halacha v'yadua she'esav soni as Yaakov. Halacha v'yadua, it's halacha l'Moshe miSinai that Esav hates Yaakov. So what kind of language is that halacha v'yadua? Say that's the derech ha'olam, halichas olam. What do you mean halacha v'yadua she'esav soni as Yaakov? So interesting, the one who made the statement is Rav Shimon. And so Rabbi Nachum Zemba has an interesting explanation. He says, it's Rav Shimon l'shitaso, and Rav Shimon consistent with his view. Because we know there's a general issue in terms of, in the Gemara, whether with darshinan taima dekra. Do we take the reason and limit or expand the scope of the mitzvah? So in other words, the Torah tells us not to take collateral from a widow. And the simple reason being, it would seem to us that because the widow is poor, doesn't have money, and therefore we don't want to take collateral from her. So the Gemara asks, what about if it's a wealthy widow? Let's say she has a nice life insurance policy, she's independently wealthy. What about a wealthy widow? Can you take collateral from her? So that's the machlokas in the Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda says no, and Rav Shimon says yes. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Eino darshinan time at the cross. We have no right to take the reason and to limit or expand the scope of the mitzvah. And Rav Shimon says yes. Darshinan time at the cross. Why is it we're allowed to take the reason? Why is it the Torah says not to take collateral from a widow? It's because she's poor. So therefore, then we have a right to say in the case of a rich widow, one is permitted. So that's a machlokes, Rav Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda in general. In general, halacha, we usually paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. We assume eino darshin in time of the Kra, except in a case where the Torah itself gives the reason for the mitzvah. The Berishis Vayishlach begins with Esav and Yaakov, the confrontation between them. So Yaakov prepares for Esav in different ways. He sends him a gift to appease him. He prepares in battle. And also, of course, he is mispalel. He prays to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So what does he pray? So the pasuk says, Hatzileni na miyad achi miyad Esav. Save me from my brother. Save me from Esav. So the Beis HaLevi points out that it seems to be redundant here. We all know Esav and Yaakov are brothers. If Esav and Yaakov are brothers, so what does the Torah have to tell me, brother, my brother Esav? Save me from my brother, save me from the hands of Esav. Just say, save me from Esav and save me from my brother. So Beis HaLevi says it must be the Torah is referring to two different aspects. That Hatzilena miyad achi, there are two types of anti-Semitism. There's the anti-Semitism, the pogroms, when they come to physically, they try to kill us. That's the Esav, he comes with the sword, no secrets, no tricks, he's out to kill us. However, when it comes to miyad achi, his brothers, he comes as our brother, our friend, and tries to convert us. And that's what we see, that miyad achi is even worse, because that's mentioned first in the pasuk. So we know in terms of the pogroms and other times, so that was from the time of Esav, that they came and they weren't even giving us a chance. But miyad achi, we live in an open society, so now perhaps it's even more dangerous in terms of assimilation and intermarriage. And that's what they point out as well. Later on in the pasuk, it says when later on in the parasha, when Yaakov's fighting with the angel, the Sar Shel Esav, so it has a lashon of the hugging. So hugging can either be look like they're close or like they're wrestling. And we see both aspects of the different types of Esav. Esav could come as your brother, Esav could come with the sword. And that's why, in fact, they point out that what is the source of anti-Semitism? The source of anti-Semitism is, the Medrash says, why is it called Sinai, when the Torah was given on Sinai? Because Misham Yada Sinna Mayola. From here, sin came onto the world. Hatred began. So the problem is, we all know, Esav came before Har Sinai. And as Rashi tells us, Halacha v'yedua she'esav soni es Yaakov, that it's halacha l'moshe b'Sinai that Esav hates Yaakov. And we all know the quintessential enemy, Amalek, that came before the Torah was given. So what does that mean? So which one is it? Where did anti-Semitism begin? So I heard in the name of Rav Zelig Epstein, he points out there are two types of anti-Semitism. What we'll call religious anti-Semitism, or what we'll call ethnic anti-Semitism. Religious anti-Semitism is the crusades. They come, they want you to convert and follow their religion. So even though it's absurd, but at least there's some logic to it. Like as I think it was Rav Yorenson Eibschitz pointed out that when the priests try to get him to convert, he says, I'll give you $100 plus if you convert. So he said, my father taught me when I was young, if I have a horse and you have a horse, and I'm willing to pay money in addition to the horse to get yours, you're saying the other horse is better. So even though it doesn't make any sense, but at least we understand it. There's a competition, your religion, my religion, so they're trying to get you to come to their religion. But ethnic, racial, there's nothing to do about it. As at the time of the Holocaust, you're a Jew, whether your mother, your father, grandparents, whatever the demarcation was, you're going to be killed. So there's the religious anti-Semitism, and there's the ethnic, the racial. And that's what Chazal has given us two different holidays. Two rabbinic holidays. The holiday of Hanukkah and the holiday of Purim. Because the Mefarshim point out, usually Hanukkah and Purim are very similar in many areas. However, the Mefarshim ask, the commentators ask, how come when it comes to Purim, we have an obligation to have a meal, a Suda, chi of Suda. However, when it comes to Hanukkah, according to different opinions, one is not obligated to have a meal. It's praiseworthy. You should have a meal and have divrei Torah, shiros, v'tishbachos, and make it a Sudas mitzvah. But what's the difference between Hanukkah and Purim? So there's a famous answer from the Lavush that it was the nature of Hanukkah and the nature of Purim were different. What the Goyim wanted from us. When it came to Purim, it was a physical thing. They wanted us. Haman wanted to Hashvil Haharas call Yehudim Taf and Nashim. It didn't make a difference. Men, women, and children. There's nothing you could do. He wanted us dead. But by Hanukkah, the Syrian Greeks, the Greek culture, they just want us to accept their culture. They didn't want us dead. It's only because we didn't accept their culture that they attacked us, and we needed the Maccabees to come and defeat them. So these two Yom Tovim, the Yom Tovim of Hanukkah and Purim, represent the two types of anti-Semitism. Purim is the physical, and that's why we celebrate in a physical way. We have a Suda. When it comes to Hanukkah, we celebrate in a spiritual way. We light the Hanukkah, the candles, the Torah. The light represents Torah and mitzvahs, Kinir mitzvah v'Torah or, and therefore we go ahead and we sing Hallel and praise. We celebrate in a much more spiritual way because that's where the enemies attack from. So that's why we have the two Yom Tovim on Hanukkah and Purim. And in fact, that's what they point out as well. Parenthetically, there's the Rashi. So that's Esav and Amalek. They wanted us dead. But by Har Sinai, that was a religious anti-Semitism. And that's the two types. When Esav comes as his brother and he comes as Esav. He comes as Esav out to kill us. But when he comes as our brother, that's the other anti-Semitism. And that's what Yaakov was praying for. Hatzileina miyad achi biyad Esav. The double language from both. And Rashi points out, quoting from Rav Shimon, halacha v'yadua she'esav soni es Yaakov. It's a well-known halacha that Esav hates Yaakov. What kind of expression is that? That halacha v'yadua, that Esav hates Yaakov. But to say that's the way, it's a derech ha'olam, halichas olam, that's the way it is. So what does it mean? That halacha v'yadua. So Menachem Zember explains that we know there's a famous discussion in the Gemara in Baba Metzia, Sanhedrin, many different Gemaras, whether you darshinan taima dekra. In other words, could you take the reason and then limit or expand the scope of the mitzvah? So for instance, the Torah tells us not to take collateral from a widow. To the So it doesn't tell us why, but presumably because the widow is poor. So the Gemara has a machlokas Rabbi Yehuda Rav Shimon. What about if it's a rich widow? She had a good life insurance policy, or she was independently wealthy, and now she has a lot of money. Could you take collateral from a rich widow? So Rabbi Yehuda says, no, Eino darshinan taima dekra. We don't take the reason and limit the scope of the mitzvah, or expand it. And Rav Shimon says, darshinan taima dekra. We take the reason, and we can limit or expand the mitzvah based on the reason. And we normally pass in Rabbi Yehuda that we're not darshinan taima dekra. However, in a case where the Torah itself gives us the reason, so we are darshinan taima dekra, like by Sukkot. The Torah says, we sit in the sukkah, we look at the skach and remember the mitzvahs. So therefore, by sukkah we have to have a special kavanah. Besides the general mitzvah of sitting in the sukkah, we have to have a mind to fulfill the reason behind the mitzvah and remember the great chesed that God did to us. Or similarly, by the 613th mitzvah, according to many, is every male Jew has an obligation to write a Sefer Torah. And yet most of us do not fulfill it. So the different reasons given, either because we can't afford to, it's too expensive, or because we're not bikiyim, we're not well versed in all the exact letters, and therefore we can't fulfill the mitzvah. However, there's a famous answer from the Torah and the Rush that we fulfill it by buying Jewish books, building a Jewish library, taking notes to the shir. How could it be? How could the mitzvah change? We know Taryag mitzvahs are forever. The 613 mitzvahs are eternal. So how can it change? So there's different explanations, whether it's in addition to the mitzvah or instead of. But what they point out is today, because the Torah tells us what is the purpose of learning. What's the reason for writing a Sefer Torah? Is to facilitate Torah learning. So back in the day, before they had the printing press, so how did you used to learn? You went into the Aron Kodesh, you took out a Sefer Torah, and you everyone learned together. Today we only take out Sefer Torah on Shabbos, Monday, Thursday to Sefer Shel Kavod. We don't really learn from it per se. When we read it, we're learning. But other learning we do from, we take out a Chumash, a Gemara, and all the other Svarim we take out and learn from. So what's the mitzvah of writing a Sefer Torah? Is to facilitate Torah learning. So in the days before, when they used to learn from a Sefer Torah, so therefore that's how you facilitated Torah learning. However, today that we learn from different Gemaras, Chumashim, etc., so the mitzvahs change. And the principle stays the same, it's to facilitate Torah learning. And however you facilitate Torah learning, that can change from one generation to another. But the principle can't change. As I'm asked many times, does Jewish law change? So it depends what you mean. If you mean, if someone asks me the question today and the same question 200 years ago, I might give them a different answer. However, the principles can change